Third, Edwards believed that Christ died specifically for his own elect, paying the ultimate price to redeem a particular people who would enjoy a personal and living relationship with him. This means that everyone for whom Christ died will come to him and be saved. What kind of powerless death on the cross would require his blood to be shed for those who would remain his enemies, die in their sins, and never be saved? But his death was not lacking in power. His blood was sufficient to save everyone for whom it was intended. His death was for his own people, his sheep, his bride, his body, those for whom he has shown great favor. Greater love has no man than this, than that Christ would lay down his own life for his friends. Fourth, Edwards believed that every genuine calling from God is effectual, that is, powerfully effective, so that when a person genuinely comes to Christ, there will be a clear evidence of the work of God in bringing about a new spiritual rebirth. This is sometimes called irresistible grace, for the one who is truly saved will not resist God's power, but respond to it, and the results will be life-transforming, for God's purposes will not be thwarted. As the Scripture says, it is only by God's grace that a person who has no fear of God, and whose heart has enthroned many idols, can be brought to its knees to worship the true God of heaven. Through God's irresistible grace, a heart of stone can be made a heart of flesh. A dead spirit can be made alive. A barren fruit tree can be made to bear fruit to God. Finally, Edwards believed that all who were truly saved could never again be lost, not merely making it to heaven, but continuing in the life of faith. True saving grace will cause a Christian to endure to the end, to be delivered from the full force of Satan's power, to mature in faith against all human odds, to stand in the midst of a world that is no friend to those who are serious about their faith. In that sense, Paul's testimony near the end of his life is really the testimony of all true believers, when he says, "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Finally, there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me on that day, and not to me only, but also to all who have loved his appearing." These teachings, which are nothing more than the belief that God is in control of all things, even the heart of man, are clearly taught in Scripture, and were once considered basic to the Christian faith. They were the historical foundation of nearly every Christian denomination, and are found in nearly every great creed and confession of faith that the Church has held to throughout her history. They were taught by Jesus and the apostles, early Church fathers, the Reformers, the Puritans, the early Christians who came to America. They have been held by Catholics, Lutherans, Anglicans, Congregationalists, Baptists, Presbyterians, and many other denominations. In that sense, they represent the unity, the oneness of the Church's understanding of Scripture throughout the centuries. Contrary to the claims of many who say that the doctrines of sovereign grace are a hindrance to the spread of the gospel and to genuine revival, these teachings were the lifeblood of the Reformation and of the early revivals that swept through the professing Christian world and revitalized the Church. Like Jonathan Edwards, we believe these challenging truths are necessary for the world to hear. But because they humble man's pride in himself and in his own spiritual abilities, they are not natural to our human understanding, and so they've been neglected by much of the modern Church, and even called divisive by many. Some people from the start would mock a man who would preach a sermon called "Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God." That shouldn't surprise us. Paul the Apostle himself faced great opposition to the preaching of the truth, even from those within the Church, and at times had to stand almost alone. Many in Edward's day didn't like what he had to say either. But what he said is what the Scriptures clearly teach. We see in his sermon titles a sober balance between the absolute demands of God's law and the freeness of God's grace. Today, as then, we need to follow Scripture's advice and examine our souls regularly to determine whether our faith is real or not. For all of our Christian activity, so much of which is man-centered, we are a lost generation. Our land and our churches, as in Edward's day, have fallen into spiritual apathy and unbelief. Thousands among us delude themselves into thinking that they are all set, but in truth they're under the condemnation of God and rushing towards His fearful judgment. Without a genuine spiritual reawakening, which can come only from God, as a nation we will go the way of ancient Rome and others that crumbled because of their sins and their unbelief in the truth. We need more men like Jonathan Edwards, who spoke the truth even when it cost him dearly. We call upon ministers of God to rise up, even though it may cost us our prestige and our power, and though it will likely drive some people away, to speak the hard truth to a dying world. And we call those who are wandering spiritually, even those who may already profess to be Christians, but who sense their faith is powerless and not genuine, to come in true and simple faith to Jesus Christ, casting your care upon Him, where there is still mercy and forgiveness of sins. In Isaiah chapter 55, the voice of a compassionate God calls us, "Ho, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come, buy and eat. Yes, come, buy wine and milk without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for what is not bread, and your wages for what does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me, and eat what is good, and let your soul delight itself in abundance. Incline your ear and come to me. Hear, and your soul shall live, and I will make an everlasting covenant with you, the sure mercies of David. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. Let him return to the Lord, and he will have mercy on him, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon."